This is Business Nigeria. Over 4 months now, the oil market has been largely nervous as prices dipped by more than 30%. Many analysts, observers had waited so long for this crucial OPEC meeting in Vienna, which is ongoing, where a new direction for the energy market will be agreed upon. Maybe a cut in crude production of up to 1 million barrels per day. Already many members see cuts as a direct measure to salvage price, and it seems countries like Nigeria and Libya may be under pressure to fall in line as well. Well, this is important now at this meeting. What is that? And that is, what is the plan of President Donald Trump in all of this? What is he playing at? We know him with his tweets, and the latest one, which he tweeted yesterday, quote, "The world does not want to see or need higher oil prices," end quote. Well, he's been talking about Saudi Arabia maintaining the production level at what it is. But do you think Saudi Arabia would actually maintain that level or cut production? He also wants them to keep the price levels at what it is. Well, with his quote, we all saw it there. But would Saudi Arabia succumb to pressure? So that question is what we have focusing on today. And also, will Nigeria and Libya also succumb to pressure? What does this cut mean for OPEC member nations? And what is the U.S. plan in all of this? Our focus on Business Nigeria today. Welcome once again. I am Yemisi Landre Ido. Let's begin quickly. The OPEC meeting at its headquarters in Vienna to decide on its production policy is ongoing, and led by Saudi Arabia, OPEC's crude production has risen by 4.1% since mid-2018 to 33.31 million barrels per day. Oil output from the world's biggest producers, OPEC, Russia, and the U.S. has increased by 3.3 million barrels per day since the end of 2017 to 56.38 million barrels per day. Now, the volume is meeting almost 60% of global consumption. Russia, a major oil producer, will meet the cartel to discuss production levels. It's also expected that a supply cut will be agreed upon. Well, let's get insight and analysis on this. And Chief Economist Michael Vetiva Capital Limited, Michael Famaroti, joins me via Skype. Also joining in the talk is energy analyst Balazaka. Many thanks you both for joining us on Business Nigeria. Well, let me begin with you, Michael. The meeting is ongoing. Many analysts, many observers expect a cut. Do you agree to this? All right, I'm told Michael isn't ready, but Balazaka, if you could hear me, I was asking, do you think there is going to be a rounded agreement at this meeting?
At the moment, I will expect that OPEC as a cartel that is after protecting the interests of its member nations should do something to make sure the prices of crude oil globally does not go down or continue to fall. And one of the easiest way to achieve that is by making sure they halt the boost in production. They have to make sure they don't allow glut to take place in production. And the only way to achieve that is by making sure there is discipline in production, and fundamentally they will make sure that there is production cuts.
Yes, Mr. Zakat, before we go into the U.S. pressuring Saudi Arabia, let's bring it home here, and that's talking about Nigeria. Many think Nigeria is already under pressure to join OPEC supply cuts, seen as other members are eager at this meeting to bring Nigeria and Libya back into the production cuts agreement. Well, if agreements are reached for a cut in supply, what does this mean for Nigeria's 2.3 million barrels per day outlined in its MTF framework?
If Nigeria is to comply with the policies of the global cartel to which it belongs, and is also a loyal member of the global cartel, if Nigeria is to comply with the global policy of OPEC, and OPEC insists on oil cut, then Nigeria must comply. But before that, Nigeria also needs to understand that she and Libya have been given almost 2 years concession to continue production. And that simply means that concession was given to Nigeria and Libya because the cartel considered the internal disruptions that Nigeria and Libya suffered, and which to some extent affected their revenues. But I think 2 years concession is good. OPEC is not going to decide how Nigeria uses her or deploys her revenues from crude oil. But at least if you are given 2 years concession by a global cartel, it is in your own interest to at least respect the next decision. If decision is for Nigeria to to suspend, or if it is the decision now that oil cut freedom should stop, then Nigeria should respect it, because it's a global cartel, and it is in the interest of Nigeria that the prices of crude oil stay up so that Nigeria can make more revenues.
Okay, but what is the implication of this for Nigeria's budget? Looking at already the medium expenditure framework that we have, that will be affected. But what's the implication for our budget in 2019?
Definitely, when you look at the medium-term expenditure framework and our projections or budget for 2019, we are going to experience a reasonable degree of deficit. And it is very good that if that cut eventually takes place, then it is an early warning for us. We have to look at other areas within our budget to see how we can manage likely deficit. But definitely, if that cut comes into play or into action or into effect, depending on the volume of crude oil that we are going to cut back, then we are going to have our revenues affected. All we need to do is to look on the side of gas and condensate and see if we can leverage on that to reduce deficit.
Okay, so if we are going to set an agenda or plan ahead for the 2019 budget, what do you think the benchmark would be at? Already we see Iran warning that if there is no agreement or there is a failure to agree on substantial output, prices will flatten to about $40 a barrel in the new year.
Well, that simply means we just need to be realistic in our projection and our benchmark. And if from experts, prices may flatten to as low as $40 per barrel, it will not be out of place if we set our benchmark as probably a figure between 30 and 40, and $35 per barrel will not be too bad. But like we said, have to look at the areas of gas and condensate, because those ones do not fall under the OPEC cuts or OPEC restrictions. So much revenues can be made from natural gas and condensates.
Okay, but in your opinion, before I let you go, President Donald Trump has continued to pressure Saudi Arabia to maintain the production level at what it is at the moment. What do you think is the U.S. plan in all of this? Or if I may say, the trick that the U.S. is playing at the moment?
What is happening from the side of the United States is more political than just looking at the generics of economics. Remember, we have the issue of the journalist Khashoggi, who has been killed, and he was principally based in the U.S., but was killed in the Saudi Arabian embassy in Turkey. And at the moment, Donald Trump, it's neither here nor there on what will happen to the relationship between his government and the person that is being alleged to be responsible for the killing of the journalist. And he doesn't want to do anything that will affect the relationship between his government and the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But when you look at it beyond that also, the U.S. is a high energy consumption nation. And if the prices of crude oil continue to go down, the shale oil that they produce will not be economically viable. And that means they will suffer in terms of lack of energy. And the only way they can get energy or crude oil at cheaper cost and refine at cheaper cost is by talking to that cartel or warming themselves into that cartel that produces more than 60% of the global crude oil to do something about production. And let us also remember, within the cartel, Saudi Arabia is a bigger country that produces so much. So it is out of place. Any country will want to protect her citizens. The U.S. is a high energy consumption country. So whatever the U.S. is doing is likely to have effect, but not to a great extent. Because OPEC, whether Saudi Arabia is there or Saudi Arabia is respected, but OPEC is a bigger cartel. And the decision of the entire member countries plus other 10 countries led Russia determine what the final decisions will be.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, energy analyst Balazaka. Well, I'm told Michael is joining us now via Skype. Yes, Michael, let me begin from where Balazaka ended his discussion there with us and his insight. Yes, he talked about the U.S. plan in all of this may be slightly political, but do you think that Saudi Arabia will have to balance her interest with that of America, her trade and political ally?
So Saudi Arabia definitely needs to consider the geopolitical dimension with the U.S. So we've all been following the killing of the journalist, findings of the CIA, and President Trump has put pressure on Saudi Arabia on the oil issue, but has been noticeably supportive of the rulership there on the political front. And I'm sure that they will be hoping that they can maintain a working relationship with the US, and that is likely to weigh on their minds when they decide or come to determine what level of cuts they want for 2019. Okay,
so at Vetiva, do you think there will be an all agreement from all the OPEC members to cut production level?
Yeah, I think ultimately the reality with OPEC is that it's like any group. There are the influencers and there are the followers. And once Saudi Arabia can get a number of countries on board, everyone else is going to fall in line. We expect that to happen. There would be some form of deal, primarily because the market response in terms of oil prices would be extremely unfavorable. And for 2019, Saudi Arabia would be looking for a price of around $60 to balance its books. So we expect to see them push through a deal.
Yes, Iran is already warning that if there is no substantial cut, there might be, the prices in 2019 may be flat at about $40 a barrel. Do you actually think so? Hello, Michael?
Yes.
Yes, I was saying Iran has sent out a warning that if there is no cut, prices will flatten to about $40 a barrel in the new year. Do you think generally that there is going to be an agreement, especially looking at Nigeria and Libya, not if they do not succumb to pressure to join in supply cuts?
I don't think Nigeria or Libya have the clout to influence the deal ultimately. I agree with the Iranian perspective. There really is no floor to oil prices. And just as how we opened the year at a surprising level of around $60, we could be opening 2019 at $40, right? I think the prudent thing for OPEC to do is to cut. More importantly for me, I'm looking to see how they figure out their long-term strategy, because every year they cede market share to the US. And I think that's something that is going to be hot on the table, and that Russia in particular will be focused on.
Okay, yes, global output as it stands as at today is about 53.68 million barrels per day, and it's expected that a billion cut may be agreed upon. What effect are we going to be seeing from this 1 billion cut on prices?
So I think general expectation for 2019 is that the market will be oversupplied by between 1 to 1.5 million barrels a day. I think the OPEC Economic Commission a month or so ago recommended a cut of 1.3 million barrels. Not sure we're going to see that high, but I expect to see somewhere between 600 and a million barrels a day. And what it will do is it will help tilt the balance of the market more towards demand. We would still be in an oversupplied market by the end of 2019 because of the rise in US output, but generally the OPEC cuts will help.
Okay, yes, let's get back to President Donald Trump's stand on all of this. And yesterday we saw that he tweeted once again, aside from the politics now, is saying that the world does not want to see or need higher prices. Do you stand with him on this?
So it's a basic question in that, when there's a price, there are two parties. There's a buyer and there's a seller. The seller loves higher prices. Sellers like Nigeria, like US shale producers, like Russia, like Saudi Arabia, they love high oil prices. But there's a buyer, and the buyer doesn't like high oil prices. The world we live in, we have more buyers than sellers. And only because OPEC has been able to organize itself have the sellers actually had any sway on the market in the last couple of decades. But generally, because there are more oil consuming countries than there are oil producing countries, generally the world prefers cheaper oil. But there's a limit because with cheaper oil, you don't have investments. And without investment, over time, oil becomes more expensive. So there's a balance to be struck there as well.
Okay, there's been this constant pumping of shale oil by the United States. Can it at any point break OPEC production?
No, that's OPEC produces about over 30 million barrels a day. The US, by the end of 2019, may be producing 12 million barrels a day. That's not even up to half. It will take decades of innovation and drilling and discoveries for the US to ever meet that total, if at all. But that's not the ambition of the US, simply because there may be no demand for 30 million barrels a day of US type oil. And they impressively increased their market share over the last 4 years anyway. So I don't think they are aiming for OPEC scrap.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that and may get your opinion when the decisions have been made on cutting production supply from the OPEC meeting. Thank you so much, Michael Famaroti, for your time on Business Nigeria.
Pleasure as always.
Well, we'll take a break now and be back with more. To stay with us. This is Business Nigeria. Time to cross over to the Nigerian stock market. Effiong Ekop is standing by to bring us details of market activities at the end of closing this Thursday. Yes, mid-trade, you told me the all-share index was down by 0.94% thereabout. How did it close?
Well, we still see negative transactions on the floor and sales pressure coming on the trading floor and depressing the all-share index, and indeed it closed, in a very disturbing way, 1.07%, and that's very serious for one trading day, and that's on the back of losses by heavy cap stocks led by Dangote Cement. Dangote itself was able, to leave the trading floor with a basket of losses calculated above 5%. And so many of the high cap stocks followed Dangote Cement. Let me turn to my guest, Paul Uzum Adila from Royal Guarantee Trust Security, so that we take in perspective.
Yeah, thank
Paul,
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Very bad trading day and even the week, and many of you on the trading floor throughout the morning discussing the weak pattern that you've had on the floor. So, as it is now, Paul, are we going to see the usual December mid-rally?
Well, today what we saw was it was not really a bad day. We just Dangote Cement lost 5 naira, and once Dangote Cement loses, market cashes good. If market yesterday Dangote Cement gained 5 naira from 195 to 190, and that's why you saw a marginal gain in the index yesterday. So the other things that happened, like Dangote Diamond Bank has been on a bullish run since the beginning of this week. So that's downgrade from international banking license to national bank. So investors are
we sincerely apologize for that poor audio quality. We'll get back to them as soon as we can establish the audio there. Well, as part of efforts to provide affordable broadband infrastructure and services, communication experts have prompted the federal government to approve the adoption of the TV white space technology in Nigeria. This was disclosed at a communication and technology workshop in Abuja. Tijesu Adeoye tells us more.
Nigeria developed a 5-year strategy in the year 2013 to drive affordable internet access and broadband penetration by 30%. But 5 years down the line, the impact of the National Broadband Plan, developed through a presidential committee, is still yet to be felt, especially in rural areas. Although the National Communications Commission says that Nigeria's current broadband penetration stands at about 23%, it still seeks to achieve the 30% target by the end of the year. Communication experts are now pushing for the adoption of the TV white space technology, a strategy that would leverage on the unused broadcast spectrums to deliver internet services and help to facilitate broadband penetration in Nigeria.
Over the last few years, we've tried a lot of options to see if broadband penetration can get to the targets, and so far we've not been successful. So that has made us open up to every solution out there.
The spectrum is in many places not being utilized today. So the ability to use that spectrum, make use of it in ways that we currently don't, but provide broadband services which really are the critical future for tomorrow. Make that happen, we think, is really possible with TV white space. The propagation characteristics of that spectrum are really good because it travels a long distance and it can travel through certain kinds of obstructions.
Some states will still currently charge as high as 1,000 naira. Some charge as high as 3,000 naira. We don't want, no need to mention the names of the states. So the idea behind it is the federal government got involved through the intervention of the NCC and the minister and all that, to put the proposal for reduction of right-of-way charges to the Federal Economic Council.
Internet service providers say this strategy may be quite helpful, but should not be mistaken for a magic bullet that will make broadband issues disappear. But these experts believe strongly that it will remove the barriers to expanding broadband services for deeper penetration and adoption, especially in rural areas.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on Business Nigeria. We would surely be back here tomorrow to discuss the OPEC outcome of that meeting to see if members really are in favor of that cut to salvage global prices there. Many thanks for your time all the time. I am Yemisi Lanredo. See you tomorrow.